Okay, time for the much anticipated top 5 cryptos. And let's see what's going to make the list. And of course, Bitcoin's on that list just simply because of market structure and simply because of outperformance of the whole crypto market cap. And Bitcoin is so far still king, right? So you can't ignore that fact. So it has to be the first one that I talk about. And I'm just going to show you the market symmetry here from the beginning of time, not really beginning of time, but back in 2011. And you can see on log scale here, and all these charts that I'm going to be doing, they're going to be on log scale. But essentially, what you can see is going up towards levels, breaking arcs, breaking a lot of things, and it'll lead to where price is today. And initially, it just started out here at the orange level, broke out above with a back test, broke out higher, followed the arc down, back to this blue angle. And that blue angle here was a super important angle all the way up, right? You can see it was a resistance, then it flipped to a support temporarily, then it lost that support forever, right? And that was back in 2018, but that's no big deal. That was kind of the beginning or the middle of that bear market, and that bear market ended when it retested the back arc or the top arc. And you can see that it was a previous resistance zone, flipping it to a support, and that was a necessary development for price to continue higher. And that was the end of that bear market then. And then price did drift towards that other angle here, which then became important. And that was the COVID low. And then essentially price just maintained support until the maybe April of 2022, right? And then after that, maybe even May of 2022, after that, it just broke, right? You can see it hit the green level exactly. And that was a major resistance. That was the market top. Not only that, it hit the very top of the arc too, right up there, you can see. And that marked the very top of the market. And then you can see how the bear market really began is once it lost the angle, once it lost the arc, it really just began and it started to accelerate until there was a bottom. And essentially, that kind of lined up with the vertical line with the cycle bottom. And then it started to reverse and go higher and higher. And then that started to flip one level at a time, starting with the bottom arc, then back up here to the green level. And when I zoom in a lot more, what do we see here? We see that it's now challenging the previous resistance of the last cycle and is trying to flip it as a support right now. And what has already been flipped as a support now is this arc, which was a resistance back in November 2021, and it backtested it there just a few weeks ago as support, which was enough confirmation to start to send it higher. And sure enough, that's what you see currently right now. So eventually, this will be your support zone, right? Eventually, there will be a breakout and maybe a successful backtest or not, and then price will just continue higher. And how much higher will it go? Well, based off of this GAN, we can pull up some levels up here, and you can see that there is a possibility for price to really explode up to the arcs, which would be maybe 800,000. And then the next set of arcs, which could be 1 million. And then the next level does indeed sit around 1.9 million. You might think that's a little crazy, but let's just look at the next vertical line. That's essentially 2033. So I don't think that's out of the question. If it just gravitated towards this angle over time and then went up that angle, that could be 2033. So I think within 9 years, getting to 1.9 million is not out of the question. It's a very possible scenario. So it could happen much sooner, it could happen later, but I think based off of this market symmetry, the blue level was important, the green level was important. So once that flips to a support, guess what? The next level is also going to be important eventually, right? And that's 1.9. But it's not going to go up there in a straight line, obviously. And that's where the Fibonacci levels do come in. So when I add a Fibonacci level, we're going to look at some extensions because I love looking at future extensions. And I'm going to start with this 2013 high up here, just right up there. And then I'm going to go down to the 2015 low. And then I'm going to drag it all the way across here. We're going to line it up as close as possible. It's not going to be 100%, just to let you know. So we're going to just put it right there. And what really stands out, especially when I take off the GAN, what stands out here? Well, The one level obviously was important, and then after it broke through, it just went straight to the 1.4, back tested the 1.272, straight up to the 1.618, kind of went down a little bit in 2017, broke out to the 2.272, back tested the 1.618, wicked a little bit below. That kind of marked the bottom, but the GAN marked the bottom almost exactly, right? Then straight up, almost back to the 272, back down to the 1618. And now it's in between, or it was in between the 2618 and the 27 or 2.272. So those levels were always important, especially the 2618. You can see how many times it's really tested it as a support and a resistance. So that means I'm going to go put my GAN back on here, and then I'm going to go up and I'm going to show you the next level of the fibs, right? So that really means to me that with that high and with that low, you can see that the next level, the 3.618, does sit around 226,000. Maybe like a wick above could be like 230, 250, whatever, right? So I think the 226 could be your minimum price right there, right? It could be that, or it could wick above, right? So I think that's going to be the target, because you can see so far that price has not touched it once, right? And since the 2618 has already held as a support, I think price is going to gravitate up towards that 3.618 Fibonacci later on next year or a little bit beyond. So I think that is ultimately going to be the target, but what comes next, it just has to break this green level to continue higher. And then the full extension right up here, the 4.236 does sit around, maybe let's just call it 800,000. We'll round up there. And where does 800,000 really sit on the arcs? Well, it sits right there at the first touch, maybe around 2027, right? February of 2027 could be 800,000, right? If price just skyrocketed up there. So that's not out of the question. It could be later on down in time, right? It could be the top arc that gets to that 800,000, and that would be 2030 right there. So these are just some things to look at for the future, but essentially I think it's ready for a monster move. And that leads me to Ethereum. So this is another top 5 coin in no particular order, right? It's just one after the next, and it just happens to be up there in the market cap rankings, right? But besides that, it has some beautiful market symmetry here on log scale. So essentially what I'm looking at is from the beginning down here, close to the beginning, down in 2015. Again, very symmetrical. You can see it broke out above the orange level, and it did in fact go back and back test it exactly right there in 2016. Took off, broke above the blue level, did come back there in 2018 and test it. It even hit the green level as a resistance before that perfectly. Like, look at this market symmetry. It doesn't get any more perfect than that, right? And then price gravitated towards the angle here, which this one has been important, or it was in the past, right? Then after that, it kind of flipped that level to a support, right? Flipped this level to a support. But it did, in fact, eventually want to go back down and retest that arc there in 2022, which it did exactly. And then after that, that was the bottom. And then it finally flipped that green level to a support, and then it never looked back, which leads us to today. That price gravitated to the next angle, right? You can see over time, price gravitates to these angles. And that angle was exactly hit back in early August. So essentially, what we're looking at is support has been found, right? Right there, support has been found, and price wants to gravitate up towards the next level. And where does the next level sit? Since the green level hit perfectly, and the blue level hit perfectly, and the orange level hit perfectly, well, the next level does sit up here, and that's around 20,000, maybe 19,680. But that's going to be my target price for Ethereum because of this symmetry is so perfect, right? So to confirm my thesis, we're going to pull up the Fibonacci's from that 2018 high down there, down towards the 2000 and what's that, 19? Or yeah, December 2018 low, right? We're going to go a little bit lower there. Just try to get an approximation, right? Not an exact, but just an approximation. So there we go. And what do we see here? Well, we see that price is still battling that 1.272. Again, if I take this off right here, you can see how perfect the fibs have been, right? After the one level, it went straight up to the 1.414, straight back down to the 886. Then now it's been battling this 1.272 as a support and as a resistance, right? It was a support, it was a resistance, it was a support, and currently it's a resistance. So when it gets back to 3,000, maybe 3,100, I think it's going to run into some resistance again, but that'll only be temporary, right? So let me put back on my GAN right here, and we can see some interesting levels here that the 1.618 does sit here around 8,300, right? You can see that would be the next level because the 1.414 was hit perfectly. So I think price will gravitate up to that area. And if we follow up this angle, where does that 1.618 Fibonacci lead to on the chart? Well, it would be around here in time, maybe just right around where the angle and the arc, the top arc meet, right around there. It could be around December of 2025, right? That could be a long time. But we also know that when cycles begin, they can be very explosive and hit those numbers a lot sooner. And then after the 1.618, there is that 2.272 right up there at 53,000. And you know what's right in between there is that green level. So I think it might not have enough strength to get to that 2.272. But I think what does make sense is getting right into the halfway point of those two zones to hit that green level exactly, right? So I think that is going to be probably the minimum target there for Ethereum, and maybe even the maximum target could be the 2.272 up there because these Fibonacci levels have been very precise and very accurate throughout time. So I like the setup here. I think it's ready to go higher. It just needs a little bit more patience to break above that 1.272 fib. But once it does, I think it's ready for the 1.414 and then the 1.618, maybe some resistance, and then it'll be ready maybe later on next year, 2026 or 2027. It could get up there to that $20,000 level. And next, I think no surprise, is XRP. And I love this chart. I love it so much. It's almost my favorite just because of the market symmetry from the beginning back here in 2014 at that bottom, right? At that bottom, it's just been perfect, right? That orange level right here all the way across has been a perfect support, a perfect resistance for a long time, since 2017, right? That was the first time it was resistance. Then it exploded up to the arcs, and the top arc has been resistance all the way down, right? I've made videos of this many times. And essentially what I see now is that price is finally confirming lots of things as support, right? You can even see it did drop below there back in 2020, and it did drop to the orange arc there just to backtest it because that was also important, right? So things backtest important levels all the time, and it's very, very symmetrical. And then even the explosion back up to in 2021 to the top arc, then a backtest of the orange level again. Just so beautiful, so symmetrical. It's like only a matter of time before that top arc breaks. And that's what I'm really going to talk about in this scenario here, that the top arc does sit there around maybe 68 cents, maybe 69 cents or so. So I think it's just waiting on that to break above because it's never, never, never have flipped that top arc to a support. So once it flips it to a support, I really think it's ready to continue much higher. So that being said, let's pull up a Fibonacci from this 2013 high right up here down to that low all the way down at the bottom there. And we're going to take a look at some levels here. And I'm just going to take off the fibs, or sorry, the GAN, just like I did on the other scenarios. And just want to show you also how perfect that those extension levels have been. You can see that after the one level broke as resistance there, it went back down to the 7.1 and then just took off directly to the 1.618 and then back down to the 1.272, then back up, exactly hit the 2.272 $3 mark, then back down to the 1.2. Like, look at how symmetrical this is. And recently you saw all this fear all the way down, so much fear, but what did it just retest recently? Like a month ago, 2 months ago? it retested that 41-cent zone at 1.618. And that's all it did, guys. That's it. And it held this perfectly. And now I think it's ready for price to finally go back and retest this 2.272. But not quite yet, right? Not quite yet. So that $3 range is going to be the shorter term target. But putting back on the GAN here, you can see clearly that right up above is the arc, right? I'll zoom in. The plan is to flip this arc to a support and then continue much higher, right? Once this explodes above, it'll go much, much higher. But to be sure, let's put on our Ichimoku just to see some things and our SMAs. And I'm going to use these just for this only, just so you can see where the true resistance lies, right? You can see right here that this 200-week moving average right there at 64.95, that has been a very powerful resistance in the past month, right? And now it's finally breaking above, but there's still 1 day and 7 hours left into the weekly candle close. So I want to see this weekly candle close above it to get above that as the first step. Then the next step would be getting above the cloud. And that cloud right there is also going to be the next step. And that cloud kind of coincides with getting on top of the arc around the same time. So I really want to start to see candles not only close above the arc, but also close above the cloud in the weeks to come, in the months to come. So that's going to mean XRP is going to start to have to close weekly candles above 70 cents to get up there, right? And then once that happens, that's the next step. But that's not out of the woods yet, because then we're going to go to the monthly indicator here, and we're going to see on the monthly chart where that monthly Ichimoku lies, right? And that monthly Ichimoku lies basically the top of the cloud lies at 104. So it's not going to get to the $3 range immediately. Not exactly, right? It's going to take some time, and it's one step at a time. So the first step, get above the arc. The next step, get above the weekly cloud and the arc around the 70-cent zone. Then the next step after that, we'll have to do a monthly candle close above 105, 104 to flip that to support. And once this 105 is flipped to a support, then I think it'll be an automatic $3 after that. It'll just take off, right? That's what I think. That's going to be the minimum. And then after that, it's going to go to the 2.618, $9. And where does that $9 land in time on the arc right here? Well, that could be even maybe February of 2025, right? That could be that soon, right? We don't really know. Or it could be the next set of arcs, right? Way in the future over here, way in the future. Or it could be like 2029 or 2030 for that $9 level, right? But the point that I'm getting at this is everything's just a series of steps. And the first step is to close above the 70 and 72, and then the $1.05, and then the 3, and then the 9. And then if it does finally flip that 2.618 to a support, then the blue level becomes possible, and that is around $28 or $29. And I think that would be your maximum height for XRP. And I think it's mathematically possible, especially when you just look at the GAN alone right here. When you look at the GAN alone here and take off all other indicators, you can see clearly how important that orange level has been, which means once it gets above those Fibonacci levels I mentioned, that means the blue level will also become important in the future. But that $29 level, we got to look in time. If it just maintained this angle all the way up, that would be in 2036, right? 2036 would be that $29. So that would be some time, right? Not anytime soon, but just want to tell you in the next decade or a little bit more, that $29 could become very, very possible because the market symmetry of this chart is beautiful. And once I see this arc flipping to support, I only see great things to come in the future. And the next one that I like the most, the fourth one on my list, is Fetch AI. And Fetch AI is looking very beautiful here. Let me just show you this chart from the low here in March 2020. You can see that it took off, and you can see how important each level has been still. You see a theme with this GAN, right? When you use it correctly, levels become very important. And this orange level was very important, even a backtest there in 2022 of the arc Then what's important after that or before that, it was the previous high, right? In September of 2021, the blue level right there was the previous high, and now it is important once again. You can see price broke above it, went back down for a successful back test, almost even went back to test the arc. I thought it was going to go there, but it didn't, right? It stopped a little bit short. And now there's this bullish engulfing candle of 56% for the week. That's even trying to close the week within 1 day and 7 hours, trying to close the week even back above the arc. And if that's the case, then that is a really bullish sign for the future because it wants to confirm that this zone is support. And once this zone is confirmed as support, guess what? The blue level is support, and then the next level becomes possible, which sits currently around $11. And that $11 would be my minimum target this time, right? And you can see that if price just continued up and followed this angle as resistance all the way, it can get to that $11 maybe by September of 2025, right? So that could be a pretty explosive move. Basically in about a year, maybe a little bit more than a year. And one thing I want to do is, again, I'm going to show you the Fibonacci's like I have been doing, right? So from the previous September all-time high down there to the low, and I take off my GAN, and we can see some things happen, right? Where did the top hit recently in March of 2024? That's right, it hit the 1.272. Then it came back just to backtest the 886, and then it launched up. Now it's back over the 1 level. And that is important to know because that could be a very important support level right there. So I want that like 119, 120 level to hold as a support really going forward. And if it does, then it'll just blast up back to the 1.272 and beyond. And then the next level after that is the 1.414 and the 1.618 there around $8, right? So that means I'm going to put back on my GAN and we're going to compare levels here. We're going to compare levels here, and the 1.618 at $8 does sit around the arc here, maybe in February of 2025. So it's even possible to have a massive breakout through all this resistance and get to the bottom arc and that 1.618 level fairly quickly, right? It is a very big possibility. And if that was the case, then it could even flip this angle to a support and get to these upper $11 levels much sooner. And that doesn't stop there, right? So I'm going to go a little bit further out because there is a possibility to even have this green level flip to a support. And like I said, I think this is the minimum price target for Fetch AI, but I think there is a potential and a possibility to go much higher just simply because there's more Fibonacci levels above, and the other green level above here does sit at $127, right? So that would be my maximum target. And guess what? The 2.618 and the 2.272, that green level almost sits in the middle between those two, right? So that is some more confluence that it becomes possible. But if it doesn't reach up there, it could even just get to the 2.272 around $63 right there. So that's a good maybe halfway point between that. I mean, technically it's not halfway, right? But you get my gist. So if it doesn't want to get to that green level the very first try, then it could get to the 2.272 around $63. And then by that time, there could be some rejection in the future, wherever that lands in time, right? Maybe past 2027 or so. But wherever that lands in time, it could be some rejection. And if you did try to match it up with the bottom arc there, that could be maybe right there around March of 2028, right? That could be a $64 Fetch AI right down there. So if that were the case, then it could see some rejection to come back and retest some other levels there before it even gets to that $127 level. So that's essentially what I'm seeing. Maybe a maximum of 127, maybe a midpoint of 63, and a minimum there for Fetch AI around $11, just using the market symmetry alone. But is it ready to really break out yet? So we'll have to just look at the Ichimoku here just to see. And not really, right? You can see where it's battling resistance. All it did is go back on the weekly chart to the conversion line, which is at 128. So it is bumping into some resistance now. So I don't expect it to just skyrocket up there. What is most likely to do is maybe just range in between these levels here underneath the cloud, just cool off for some time being. Still, maybe try to find and build a new base around the 1 level, maybe a little bit below. maybe kind of retrace this arc down as a support possibly into the later 2024s. And then maybe by that time, it could be ready to challenge the upper levels into the 180s and the $2 range, and eventually go back to the 280 up here for the 1.272. So it's not going to be an immediate process, but the way this chart looks, the market structure of it all, it looks fantastic. And I think there will be a minimum price of $11. Okay, and next is Tron, TRX, right? This was my fifth on the list, and the market symmetry of this one is also incredible so far with just the angles alone, right? You can see that this angle was super important, lost it, this angle became important, lost it, then it started to drift over to this angle, and I think eventually it will over time, but just not yet, right? But it just stayed in these ranges for a long time, starting with this segment and that segment. You know, it just was beautiful. And also, what else is beautiful is the orange level. You can see it did break above a little bit, lost it, rejected it, confirmed it as resistance once, twice, three times. And there was a resistance there in 2023 for many months, right? For a few months there. And after that, it flipped it to a support. Boom, right? And now it's going higher and it's making higher weekly candle closes, or it's going to maybe in 1 day and 7 hours, right? It's still not at an all-time high there, almost, right? It's back in the wick. So this could be some resistance. And when you look at the Gann chart, you can see that it's even going up towards the top of the bottom arc. Or, yeah, right there, around 17 cents. And if you look to the left of that chart, you can see that that is still not an all-time high. So I see it coming into some resistance here. I see some challenges to break through, but that's okay. That's normal. That's just part of the process of breaking out. So I can see maybe it get rejected on the bottom of this arc a little bit and then finally can break through and then go much higher. And where do I see a minimum target for TRX? Well, that's going to be up here around 176 or 180, the blue level, simply because this orange level was important, confirmed it as support. So I think it's going to go to the next level now, which is at 180 up here. And essentially, could that happen by this vertical line? Yeah, it could. Maybe by September of 2025. That's very, very possible. Just a little bit over a year. So we'll keep an eye on that. But it's got to have some explosive moves to get up to that level, right? And one thing I love doing is doing the Fibonacci's in confluence with the Gann. So we'll continue that theme, and I'll do it again right here. And so essentially that zero level from the previous all-time high in April of 2021 and that low down here in November of 2022. And taking off my Gann so we can see things more clearly, we'll take that off. And you can see that it's been perfectly following the retrace levels like perfectly, right? The 236 held as support. Then the 382 held as support. Then that 618 level, the orange level I was talking about on my Gann, that was resistance for a while at 10 cents. Then it broke up to the 786, got rejected, back down to the 618. And now it's breaking above the 886 for the first time ever, right? First time ever since the 2021 all-time high. So what does that mean? Well, the next level target is going to be the 1.272 at 26 cents. There could be some rejection in this area or even the 31 cents, depending on if it wants to go, which level it wants to go to. And then after that, it's going to be the 1.618. And then after that, we'll put back on my Gann here, and we'll see that what lines up with the blue level up there? That's right. It's the 2.618. So I think that is confirming my minimum price target for TRX or Tron, because a lot of confluence up there. And even there's some confluence up here in time where the 2.272 had $1, right? And where does that line up? That lines up in January of 2025. So is it possible that TRX can have just a monster explosive move and just get to that Gann level, Gann arc, and the 2.272 at that time? Then maybe there'll be some rejection there and then continue to the 2.618. Yeah, I think that's very possible, right? Super possible. So we'll keep an eye on that, but that's my minimum target, and we'll see basically if things can continue higher. And what do we see up here? Well, the 3.618 is at 6.62, and the 4.236 is around 1550. So essentially, minimum target would be $1.80. Maximum target would probably be around a full extension. Not sure if it would quite get up to the next level. during this cycle, right? So we'll have to say maybe max would be around the 4.236, but that would be a monster move, right? From 15 cents all the way up to $15, that'd be incredible. But not saying it's going to happen, but I do think minimum it's going to get that 178, 180 level just by using the fibs and the GAN alone. I don't need to use any of the Ichimoku or anything else because the chart is 100% bullish, right? There's nothing bearish about this chart. The only thing is it's approaching the one level up here at 18 cents, which coincides with the top of my bottom arc right there. Or just the bottom arc, I should say. And eventually I think that's going to break, but it might take some time. So am I bullish on TRX? Very. But short term, is it going to just launch up into outer space? Maybe not, because there is some resistance above. So again, you just got to be a little patient with this one, but it's going in the right direction. And I think in time, it will get to this 178 level. So there you have it, guys. Overall, those are my 5 favorites, and I think 3 of them were obvious. Maybe this Fetch AI and this other one were not so obvious. This TRX, not so obvious. But after seeing the market structure, after seeing the market symmetry of everything, you can probably understand why everything is currently breaking out, right? So, and you can see why I think these future price targets will be hit based off of the current math, based off the current themes of what's happening, right? When one levels switch to a support, once levels flip from a resistance to a support, then price does want to gravitate higher to the next level.